She was just a waitress. At least, that's what he thought when he pointed his finger in my face and called me uneducated in front of a room full of investors. He called me slow, incompetent, barely worth the uniform I wore. He had no idea I'd graduated top of my class from Georgetown University. He had no idea I spoke 5 languages fluently. And he definitely had no idea that I'd once translated the very documents that could destroy every deal he was closing that night. What happened next? I dismantled his entire empire in less than 10 minutes using nothing but the languages he didn't know I spoke and the secrets he thought were buried in foreign contracts. This billionaire went from commanding a table of millionaires to watching his investors walk out one by one. And it all started with a single spill of water on his expensive sleeve. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will make you believe that sometimes the person you underestimate the most is the one holding the match that can burn your whole world down. This is the story of the night I stopped being invisible. Welcome to Heartline Stories. While you're here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. You know, there's something dangerously comfortable about being invisible. When nobody sees you, nobody can ask about your past. When nobody notices you, nobody digs into the things you'd rather leave buried. And for 9 long months, that's exactly what I needed. To blend in, to disappear, to serve without being remembered. My name is Monica G. Jackson, and I'm about to tell you the story that shattered my carefully constructed invisibility and forced me back into the light I'd been running from. I worked at a place called the Regency Sky Grill. If you've never heard of it, you're not alone. It's not the kind of restaurant regular people stumble into. This was the kind of place perched on a Manhattan rooftop where a single bottle of wine cost more than most people's monthly rent. Where the reservation list stretched 6 months into the future, and the guest list read like a Fortune 500 directory. Senators debated policy over aged steak. Tech CEOs closed deals over dessert. Ambassadors negotiated treaties between courses. I was a waitress there. Just another face in a crisp white blouse and black apron, moving silently between tables of power. Refilling crystal glasses, clearing bone china plates, smiling politely, and vanishing back into the background. That was my job, to serve without leaving an impression. To be present without being seen. I was 27 years old, but I felt like I'd lived several lifetimes. Betrayal has a way of aging you when you've survived things that nearly destroyed you. My uniform was always immaculate. My dark hair pulled back in a tight, professional bun. My face carefully neutral, not too warm, not too cold. I never smiled too broadly. I never spoke unless directly addressed. I never, ever allowed myself to stand out. Because here's what nobody tells you about working in places like this. The powerful don't really see you. You're scenery to them. Furniture with a pulse. Useful when they need something. Forgotten the moment you turn away. And honestly, I was grateful for it. I needed anonymity. I needed to be overlooked. But I wasn't always like this. There was a time when I had dreams that reached far beyond refilling water glasses and clearing plates. I'd once been the girl who finished at the top of her linguistics program at Georgetown University. The girl who could switch between English, Spanish, French, Mandarin, and Russian without missing a beat. I'd held 2 international interpretation certifications. I'd assisted on federal translation projects involving cross-border financial analysis. People used to ask me how I could hold so much language in one mind, and I'd tell them the truth. I wanted to build bridges between worlds. I wanted to be the voice that helped people understand each other when words failed. I wanted to matter. But then everything fell apart in my final year in academic scandal. I didn't create but couldn't escape. A betrayal by someone I'd trusted, and a shattered reputation that followed me like a shadow. So I ran. I left Washington, D.C., bought a one-way bus ticket to New York City, and told no one where I'd gone. I became a ghost in the city of millions. That night, the night everything changed, started like any other evening shift. The restaurant glowed against the Manhattan skyline, floor-to-ceiling windows, framing Bryant Park below. I tied my apron, checked my reflection one last time, and prepared for another evening of invisibility. Then our manager, Lauren Mullins, gathered the staff near the service station. Her expression was tense. "James K. Mesta is dining with us tonight," she said quietly. "High-profile investors from Chicago, Texas, and Seattle. This is a major deal closing. Be fast, be flawless, and for God's sake, don't give him a reason to complain." My stomach dropped. James K. Mesta. Even his name carried weight in the restaurant. A New York billionaire known for ruthless acquisitions and hostile takeovers. I'd heard the kitchen staff whisper about him. Demanding, cold, the kind of man who'd built an empire by crushing anyone in his path. I wasn't assigned to his table initially, but when one of the senior servers called in sick at the last minute, Lauren's eyes landed on me. "Monica, you'll cover table 12. I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. 20 minutes later, he walked in. James K. Mesta entered the Regency Sky Grill like he owned it, and for all I knew, maybe he did. He was tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a charcoal pinstripe suit that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. His presence commanded immediate attention. Conversations paused mid-sentence, heads turned. Even the ambient music seemed to lower in deference. Behind him came his entourage. First, a striking blonde woman in a sleek blue dress, Claudia Reeves, I'd later learn, head of investor relations for a Chicago private equity firm. She moved with practiced elegance, phone in hand, already documenting the evening. Next came Daniel Price, a lean man in his 40s, with sharp features and an intense gaze. He hung back slightly, observing everything with the careful attention of someone who'd built his fortune by noticing details others missed. To the right walked Chen He, a Seattle tech CEO whose company had been in the news for a recent billion-dollar acquisition. And finally, Alejandro Ruiz from Texas, broad-shouldered and jovial, greeting the maitre like an old friend. They were the picture of elite power, the exact kind of people I'd spent months avoiding eye contact with. Lauren positioned them at table 12, our premium corner table with panoramic views of the glittering Manhattan skyline. I watched from the service station as she personally welcomed them, her smile bright and professional. Then she pulled the staff aside again, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "Serve him fast, stay silent, don't make mistakes. Am I clear?" We nodded in unison. I returned to my assigned section. Grateful table 12 wasn't mine. But 15 minutes into their dinner, Jason, the server assigned to Mesta's table, suddenly clutched his stomach and rushed toward the restroom, his face pale. Lauren's eyes swept the floor and landed on me. "Monica, take over table 12, now." My pulse quickened. "Yes, ma'am." I approached their table with a crystal water pitcher, my practiced smile in place, my movements careful and deliberate. The investors were laughing, relaxed. Claudia was showing Chen something on her phone. Alejandro was gesturing animatedly, mid-story. But Mesta was different. His jaw was tight, his responses clipped. As I drew closer, I caught fragments of their conversation. Environmental clearance is already secured. The Phoenix projections are conservative. Gentlemen, Miami zoning was approved last quarter. My trained ear caught something off. The dates didn't align with federal filing timelines I'd once reviewed. The language was too vague, too assured. I reached for Mesta's water glass just as Claudia leaned back suddenly, bumping my arm. The pitcher tipped. Cold water splashed across James K. Mesta's expensive charcoal sleeve, droplets spattering onto the white tablecloth. The table went silent. His head snapped toward me, eyes blazing with cold fury. And in that moment, I knew my invisibility was about to shatter. Mesta shot to his feet so violently his chair scraped against the polished floor. The sound cut through the restaurant like a knife. "Are you kidding me?" His voice boomed across the rooftop dining room, drawing every eye in the space. "Do you have any idea what this suit costs?" "Sir, I'm so sorry," I began, reaching for a napkin. "Sorry." He knocked my hand away. "Sorry doesn't fix incompetence." The word hit me like a slap. Around us, conversations died. Silverware stopped clinking. I could feel dozens of eyes turning toward table 12, phones discreetly rising to capture the scene. I can get our manager. We'll take care of the cleaning." "Cleaning?" Mesta's laugh was sharp and cruel. "You think this is about cleaning? This is about hiring standards. This is about putting uneducated, barely competent people in positions they clearly can't handle." Heat flooded my face. My hands trembled as I clutched the pitcher. "Sir, it was an accident." "An accident?" He stepped closer, towering over me, his finger jabbing toward my face. "An accident is what happens when someone who's trained makes a mistake. This is what happens when restaurants hire service-level nobodies who can't manage the simplest tasks." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Claudia Reeves subtly angle her phone toward us, her expression unreadable. Chen has shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Alejandro's jovial smile had vanished entirely. But it was Daniel Price, the man circled in my memory of that night whose gaze I felt most acutely. He sat perfectly still, watching with the intensity of someone cataloging every detail. Mesta wasn't finished. Let me guess you barely finished high school? Maybe community college if we're being generous? This is probably the best job someone like you could get, isn't it? Serving people who actually made something of themselves. Each word was a scalpel, cutting precisely into wounds I'd spent months trying to heal. Georgetown. The scandal. The night I'd fled Washington with nothing but a backpack and shattered dreams. The brilliant future I'd lost. I felt tears threatening, that familiar burning behind my eyes. The old Monica, the one who'd learned to disappear, wanted to apologize again, to bow her head and retreat into the safety of invisibility. But something else stirred beneath the humiliation. Something I'd buried for 9 months, but never truly killed. Your career ceiling was probably set the day you were born, Mesta continued, his voice dripping with contempt. Some people are meant to lead. Others are meant to serve. You should be grateful you're even. Sir. My voice cut through his tirade, quiet but steady. He blinked, surprised I'd interrupted. I straightened my back slowly, deliberately. Set the water pitcher down on the table with careful precision. And when I looked up, I met his eyes without flinching. The fear was gone. In its place was something he hadn't expected to see in the face of a waitress he'd just humiliated. Calm, complete, unshakable. I need to tell you something, I said softly. I need to tell you something, I said softly, my voice carrying across the silent table. You're absolutely right that assumptions can be dangerous, Mr. Mesta. But perhaps not in the way you think. I paused, letting the words settle, then continued in flawless, deliberate English, not the apologetic stammering of moments before, but the measured cadence of someone trained in precision communication. You assumed I was uneducated. You assumed I had no training. You assumed I had nothing to offer beyond refilling water glasses. I tilted my head slightly. You assumed wrong. Mesta's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, I turned to Alejandro Ruiz. Señor Ruiz, I said, switching seamlessly into Spanish, le aconsejo que revise cuidadosamente los documentos de cumplimiento ambiental del proyecto de Phoenix antes de firmar cualquier cosa esta noche. Alejandro's jaw dropped, his eyes went wide. I pivoted to Daniel Price, whose intense gaze had never left my face. Monsieur Price, I continued in perfect Parisian French, les projections de rendement pour le développement de Las Vegas sont exagérées d'au moins 30% selon le dossiers fédéraux que j'ai traduits il y a 2 ans. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting from surprise to sharp interest. Chen, he was next. I met his eyes and spoke in Mandarin, my tones precise and clear. Chen Senchen, 这些投资文件中存在严重的不一致之处。您应该在投入任何资金之前咨询您的法律团队。Chen had leaned forward, his phone forgotten in his hand, utterly transfixed. Finally, I turned back to Mesta, whose face had drained of color. In Russian, I quoted a proverb my linguistics professor had taught me years ago, letting each word fall like a stone into still water. Высокомерие предшествует падению. Arrogance precedes the fall. The silence that followed was absolute. Every person at nearby tables had turned to watch. Claudia's phone was still recording, her mouth slightly open. The entire rooftop dining room had frozen, witnessing the impossible. I straightened my shoulders, feeling something unlock inside my chest, something I'd kept caged since the day I'd left Georgetown. My name is Monica G. Jackson, I said clearly, returning to English. I graduated top of my linguistics program at Georgetown University. I hold 2 international interpretation certifications, and for the past 9 months, I've been serving people who never once thought to see me as anything more than furniture. Mesta's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His expression, once so confident, so dominant, cracked visibly, uncertainty flooding his features. But here's what you really need to know, Mr. Mesta, I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word. I know exactly who you are, and more importantly, I paused, letting the moment crystallize. I know exactly what you've done. The power had shifted, and everyone in that room knew it. 2 years ago, I began, my voice steady and clear, I worked with a federal translation task group that analyzed cross-border financial documents for regulatory compliance. We reviewed hundreds of projects involving international construction firms, resort developments, and real estate acquisitions. I paused, letting that sink in. One of those firms was Mesta Global Holdings. Mesta's face went from pale to ashen. "You have no idea what you're talking about. Your Las Vegas acquisition," I continued, ignoring his interruption. "The Highland Towers project." The zoning compliance certificates filed in March 2023 claimed full approval from the Clark County Planning Commission. But the actual documents, the ones I translated from the original Spanish municipal records, showed conditional approval only, pending environmental impact assessments that were never completed. Daniel Price immediately pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. "The Phoenix Luxury Resort," I went on, my tone professional, almost clinical. "Your projected returns claim a 38% ROI over 5 years. But the financial models I reviewed showed those projections were based on occupancy rates that no comparable property in that market has ever achieved. The realistic projection, closer to 22%. Maybe." Alejandro Ruiz had gone completely still, his earlier warmth replaced by cold calculation. "Miami." I turned slightly, addressing the table as a whole now. "The waterfront development on Biscayne Bay. The environmental impact filings claimed compliance with coastal protection regulations. The documents I translated filed with the Brazilian environmental consultancy you contracted contained at least 7 material misrepresentations about wetland displacement and marine habitat disruption." He was texting rapidly now, his jaw clenched. "And the Chicago term sheets Mr. Price received last week." I looked directly at Daniel. "They reference partnership structures and profit-sharing arrangements that directly contradict the corporate filings submitted to the SEC in September. I know because I translated the offshore incorporation documents from the Cayman Islands registry. This is slander." Mesta's voice cracked as he tried to regain control. "You're making this up. This is..." "I'm citing federal documents, Mr. Mesta. Documents with filing numbers, authentication stamps, and notarized translations, bearing my certification seal." My voice was calm, methodical. "Every word I've said can be verified within 48 hours by any competent legal team." Around us, phones at nearby tables were still recording. I could see the glow of screens, the widened eyes of other diners who'd abandoned their meals to witness this unraveling. Claudia had lowered her phone slightly, her expression shifting from shock to something that looked almost like admiration. The investors began whispering urgently among themselves. Alejandro leaned toward Daniel, speaking rapidly in hushed tones. Has stood abruptly, phone pressed to his ear, walking toward the windows. Mesta tried to speak, but his voice had lost its power. The empire was cracking. And I wasn't finished yet. I turned to Alejandro first, switching back to Spanish, my voice gentle but firm. "Señor Ruiz, su firma ha invertido exitosamente en propiedades comerciales durante 20 años porque usted verifica todo. Los documentos de Phoenix contienen irregularidades en las proyecciones de flujo de efectivo que sus auditores descubrirán en 48 horas. La pregunta es, ¿prefiere descubrirlo ahora o después de firmar?" Alejandro's face hardened. He folded his arms across his chest, leaning back in his chair with the body language of a man who'd just made a decision. I pivoted to Daniel Price, speaking in flawless French. "Monsieur Price, vous avez bâti votre fortune en évitant exactement ce genre de partenariat. Les structures juridiques de Chicago présentent des conflits d'intérêts qui exposeraient votre fonds à des responsabilités réglementaires. Vous le savez déjà. Je vous confirme simplement ce que votre instinct vous dit." Daniel's eyes narrowed. He turned sharply toward Mesta. "James, I need immediate clarification on the Chicago corporate structures. Tonight." Chen had returned from his phone call, his expression unreadable. I addressed him in Mandarin, speaking quickly but clearly. "Chen Sensheng,您的律师团队现在正在审查西雅图的禁止调查文件。环境合规问题不仅仅是财务风险，它们是声誉风险。您的公司刚刚完成了一次高调收购，您现在承受不起这种丑闻." He didn't hesitate. He pulled out his phone and dialed. "Get me Richard. Now." He walked away from the table without another word, already speaking urgently to his attorney. Mesta finally found his voice, rising to his feet, his face flushed with rage. This is absurd. She's a disgraced academic with an axe to grind. You're going to believe some waitress over. Stop. My voice cut through his tirade like a blade. I switched to Russian, the language I'd always loved most for its precision and poetry. Pravda не боится света. Truth fears no spotlight, Mr. Mesta. The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Claudia Reeves, who'd been recording silently this entire time, lowered her phone slowly. Her expression had transformed completely shock, replaced by something that looked like respect, even admiration. Alejandro stood first, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate slowness. James, I'm withdrawing my interest in the Phoenix development. Effective immediately. Daniel Price rose next, his voice ice cold. We'll need a full legal review before any Chicago agreements move forward. Consider tonight's signing canceled. Chen had returned, pocketing his phone. My team advises against proceeding. I'm out. Mesta stood frozen, watching his carefully orchestrated evening, his empire-building moment disintegrate before his eyes. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came. The entire restaurant watched in absolute silence as 3 investors gathered their belongings and walked away from table 12. The deal was dead, and I was still standing. Mesta turned on me the moment the investors disappeared from view, his face contorted with fury. You just cost me $40 million, he hissed, stepping so close I could smell his expensive cologne mixed with sweat. I will destroy you for this. I'll make sure you never work in this city again. I'll have you fired, blacklisted, buried so deep. Mr. Mesta. Lauren Mullins's voice cut through his threats like steel. She moved swiftly across the dining room, positioning herself directly between us. Step back, now. He blinked, surprised. Excuse me? Do you know who I am? I know exactly who you are. Lauren's voice was calm but unyielding. And I know what just happened here. You publicly berated a member of my staff, made baseless accusations about her competence and education, and created a hostile environment that violated every standard of conduct we maintain at this establishment. She ruined my business deal. Mesta jabbed a finger toward me. She had no right. She had every right to defend herself against verbal abuse. Lauren didn't budge. What she shared was factual information, delivered professionally, in response to your unprovoked attack on her character. Monica acted with integrity. You, sir, did not. A muscle twitched in Mesta's jaw. I want her fired, immediately. That's not your decision to make. Lauren gestured toward the security staff near the entrance. Edwin, please escort Mr. Mesta to the elevator. You can't be serious. You are no longer welcome at the Regency Sky Grill this evening. Lauren's tone remained perfectly professional, but there was iron underneath. We'll be reviewing tonight's incident, and you'll be hearing from our management team regarding your future access to this establishment. 2 security officers approached, polite but firm. Sir, this way, please. Mesta looked around wildly, as if searching for support, but found only dozens of eyes watching him. The entire dining floor had witnessed everything, the humiliation he'd inflicted, the truth I'd revealed, and now his complete loss of control. As the security team guided him toward the elevator, something remarkable happened. Someone started clapping. Then another guest joined. Then another. Soft applause rippled across the rooftop, not loud or celebratory, but unmistakable. A quiet acknowledgement of what they'd witnessed. Mesta's face flushed crimson as the elevator doors closed on him. The applause faded. Conversations resumed. The restaurant slowly returned to its normal rhythm, though every eye still flickered toward me occasionally. I stood motionless, my hands trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. My legs felt weak. My mind struggled to process what had just happened. Lauren touched my elbow gently. Monica, come with me, please. My heart dropped. This was it, the part where consequences caught up with me. I followed her through the dining room, past curious glances and whispered conversations, toward her office. I had no idea if I was about to be fired or saved. Lauren closed her office door and turned to face me, her expression unreadable. I thought I started, but she held up a hand. Monica, in 15 years of managing this restaurant, I have never been prouder of a staff member. Her voice was warm, genuine. What you did out there took courage, most people will never possess. You stood up for yourself with grace and precision against someone who tried to crush you. That's not a fireable offense. That's integrity. Relief flooded through me, so powerfully my knees nearly buckled. You're not firing me. Firing you? Lauren laughed softly. Monica, I'm hoping you'll still be here tomorrow, though something tells me you won't need this job much longer. Before I could ask what she meant, someone knocked on the door. Claudia Reeves stood in the doorway, still in her elegant blue dress, but her demeanor had completely transformed. May I have a moment with Monica? Lauren nodded and stepped aside. Claudia approached me, extending her hand. Monica G. Jackson, it's an honor to actually meet you. What you did tonight. She shook her head in admiration. I've been in finance for 20 years, and I've never seen anyone dismantle a fraud that elegantly. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. This is for you. Inside was a check for $15,000. My hands shook as I read it. Beneath the check was a handwritten note on cream cardstock. For your courage to speak and for reminding the world that intelligence doesn't always wear a suit. You changed my night. Thank you. C.R. I can't accept this. You already have. Claudia smiled. You saved me from making a terrible investment. That's worth far more than $15,000. When I finally retrieved my phone from my locker, it exploded with notifications. 73 text messages, 42 missed calls. Hundreds of social media notifications. My hands trembled as I scrolled through them. The video, Claudia's video, had gone viral. Millions of views already. Number Polyglot Waitress was trending nationwide. Number Monica Speaks 5. Number Billionaire Takedown. But it wasn't just social media. Email from Meridian Language Consultants, Boston. We would like to discuss immediate employment opportunities. Email from the U.S. Diplomatic Translation Bureau. Your credentials have come to our attention. We have an opening in our D.C. office. Email from Pacific Compliance Solutions, San Francisco. Your expertise in cross-border financial documentation is exactly what we need. There were more. So many more. I stood in the staff corridor, phone glowing in my hands, tears streaming down my face, but this time, they weren't tears of shame or fear. They were tears of possibility. I walked out through the restaurant's entrance into the cool Manhattan night. The city glittered around me, alive and infinite. I'd come here 9 months ago to disappear, to become invisible, to hide from the world. Tonight, the world had finally seen me again. And this time, I wasn't running. 3 days later, I sat on a bench in Bryant Park, watching the same glass building that housed the Regency Sky Grill catch the afternoon sunlight. So much had changed in 72 hours. I'd spent 9 months running from my past, convinced that the betrayal at Georgetown had defined me, that the scandal had permanently broken something essential inside me. I'd believed that invisibility was safety, that silence was survival. I'd been wrong. That night, the night I stopped hiding, I discovered something I'd forgotten. My voice had always been my power. Not just the languages I spoke, but the courage to use them. To stand up, to speak truth, even when my hands were shaking and my heart was pounding. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in weeks. Monica? My mother's voice cracked with emotion. Baby, I've been trying to reach you. I know, Mom. I'm sorry. I smiled through tears. I saw your messages. I needed some time. Honey, I saw the video. Everyone's seen it. Are you okay? I am. And I meant it. Mom, I'm coming home to Charlotte next weekend. Not because I'm running. Because I want to see you. Because I'm ready. Oh, sweetheart, she was crying now. I've been praying for this. I know you have. That evening, the news broke. Mesta Global Holdings was under federal investigation. Stock prices had dropped 42%. 3 major investor groups had withdrawn funding. His board had called an emergency meeting. The man who'd tried to destroy me with words was watching his empire crumble because of mine. I met Lauren at a coffee shop near the restaurant. She hugged me before we even sat down. Thank you, I said quietly. For standing between us. For believing me. Monica, you didn't need me to save you. Lauren squeezed my hand. You saved yourself. I just made sure he couldn't retaliate. Still, it mattered. So what happens now? Boston? San Francisco? I smiled. Washington, D.C. Her eyes lit up. The Diplomatic Bureau? I nodded. They made it official this morning. Full-time position, interpretation, and translation for international negotiations. It's everything I dreamed of at Georgetown. Your dream career revived. Not revived, I corrected gently. Reclaimed. That night, I stood on my small apartment balcony, watching Manhattan's lights stretch endlessly into the darkness. Somewhere out there, people were still sharing the video, still talking about the waitress who spoke 5 languages and brought down a billionaire. But I wasn't that waitress anymore. I was Monica G. Jackson, linguist, interpreter, survivor, the woman who'd lost her voice and found it again. The woman who'd learned that hiding from your power doesn't protect you, it only diminishes you. I thought about Georgetown, about the betrayal that had sent me running, about the 9 months I'd spent invisible, serving people who never saw me. And I realized I'd needed that invisibility. I'd needed the silence, because in that quiet darkness, I'd rebuilt something stronger than what I'd lost. For the first time in years, I wasn't hiding. For the first time in years, my voice wasn't silent. And this time the world was listening.